Hello, I'm Adrienne Elise, an intuitive healer and teacher and astrologer. Today I wanted to talk to you about the US Pluto return and the Second American Revolution. So, right now, Pluto sits at 27 degrees Capricorn, exactly where it was at the time of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And so, if we look at a birth chart with the energies of this signing of the Declaration of Independence, we can get a bit of an idea about what this means for Pluto to be returning to this spot. Pluto hit this spot 3 times last year in 2022, and now for the third and final time is at 27 degrees Capricorn. And so, what does this mean for the US Pluto return? And Pluto is about called the destroyer, life and death, and but doesn't destroy anything that is real and true. And you can see in this time that we're living in a demolition, a controlled demolition of all of the structures of our society. And so, in looking at this US Pluto return, in order to really get an understanding of what this time is about, we need to look at the whole birth chart of the US. And so, most astrologers have looked at the birth of the United States with the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So, it was for 3 days, they worked on this uh, collaborated, trying to understand and work with and decide about ratifying this Declaration of Independence on July 2nd, July 3rd, and July 4th of 1776. And so we'll be exploring the energies around this time and how astrologers have decided on what time to delineate for this birth of the US. So there was a copy of this Declaration of Independence that was created on and officially signed on August 2nd, 1776. But the actual deciding and agreeing to these ideas and to the actual words of the document happened on July 4th, 1776. And this is indeed a day that lives, it's kind of imprinted in the psyche of the US as we celebrate our, our Independence Day on July 4th. So this seems to be the most important day as for astrologers to ascertain the birth of the United States of America. So let's talk a little bit about this Declaration of Independence, a beautiful document with ideas that we haven't quite been able to fulfill and uphold, and yet the vision of what came through in this declaration, something that's inspired people throughout this time. And the Second American Revolution with Pluto return is about making real to these promises of what the United States, the vision, America, L'America, Colombia, the goddess, what her ultimate uh, vision of the world that we want to see. And America having the opportunity to lead the way for the rest of the world. So, this Declaration of Independence was a unanimous declaration of the 13 states of America. And the most popular and profound and precious concepts come through with the very popular introduction to the Declaration of Independence that reads, we hold these truths to be self evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So, this introduction, this preamble, this is like says it all. And of course, we know that so many tragedies occurred with the Native American genocide and the keeping of slaves. But at the same time, this vision and this proclamation put out into the world was very powerful. And it kind of makes sense that it's not until the Pluto return of these energies, this vision, this proclamation that we really start to see the reality of this God-given right of equality, that the sun shines equally upon all of us, and so we all have the potential and possibility to uh, create a world based on this beautiful picture of equality. So let's talk a little bit about how this declaration came to be. Um, it's known that Thomas Jefferson was the principal author of the Declaration, and a very powerful document. And as a quote from Abraham Lincoln, that he described it as a rebuke and a stumbling block to tyranny and oppression. And it's very powerful as we look at the energies and issues that we're dealing with and facing in our world today. We're coming up against global tyranny. And so these ideas and this process is active today and very interesting to examine the historical process as well as the astrology of this time of July 4th, 1776. So, what brought about this declaration? A lot of people attribute this powerful movement of declaring independence from Great Britain to a pamphlet put out by Thomas Paine. This was a 47-page pamphlet, and this was written in 1775 and published on January 10th, 1776. So this pamphlet was written in plain language and spoke to the common people, and it was the first written work to openly proclaim and request and demand, saying it's time for us to claim our freedom, our liberty from an independence from the control of the king and Great Britain. It inspired a nation and gave the reasons very clearly outlined why a rebellion was required and that it was the right time for this to start. One of the things that common sense promoted was this American exceptionalism. And this is a very important idea because as we look at the birth chart, we'll see that these themes come forward. And I know that there's a very, very powerful group of souls that have incarnated in this time that were very involved in this first American Revolution and have come here in this lifetime to complete the task with the second American Revolution, because we never really broke free from the tyranny, as we can see with the globalist controls on the edge of trying to take control over humanity. So this represented a call for a new nation and to realize the potential of this exceptionalism of the land of America, the pioneers, the people of America. And indeed, through intuitive research, it's clear that the founding fathers were great masters, reincarnated, have worked on this vision of utopia. And you can kind of trace that back to the original ideas in the Magna Carta. Um, and so it's these founding fathers, very powerful, advanced beings holding this torch, this light for this vision. And it's been a long journey, but here we are at the edge of claiming our complete autonomy and freedom from external tyranny. This is the energy of Pluto and Capricorn. Pluto represents as the ruler of Scorpio. And of course, Scorpio has deep mysteries. And Pluto is something out there that we don't understand, representing our power, the incredible power, this potential that we have, God-given right as humans. And so this potential is Pluto represents that, but also the fear of this potential and what we don't understand about this power and how we've been programmed to fear our own God-given power. And again, reset after reset through our history, as these tyrannical forces of control have sought to keep humanity from its rightful evolution, spiritual evolution beyond the 3D lower matrix realities. And here we are, right at the threshold of this movement. So, very powerful energies coming through in this time. with Pluto in Capricorn and at this very same marker. 27 degrees, 2 and 7 in numerology, 27 would be seen as a 9. 9 is at the end. So it's representing the placement of Pluto at 27 degrees, 33 minutes of Capricorn represent, because Capricorn is authority structures and structures of our world. So it's external authority control over our power. And this is indeed the movement that we're in, returning on a global scale the power to the people. Really, this time. And it's a glorious adventure. So I invite those of you souls that feel connected to this to contact me, to um, say yes, to show up as who you are in this incarnation, connected to this. It feels like every soul that's ever died for the United States, who was present, fighting, and a part of this first American Revolution, uh, is here, as well as these masters who have been holding these principles and ideas which resonate of this utopia, of this world where we have our rights as individual souls and as our human God-given rights for equality. These ideas very, very powerful and important. And so there is a group of souls very connected and a feeling of something that you're here to do. So it'd be beautiful to start working as a group more consciously. And so let's get into this whole story of this. First of all, just talking a little bit more about the declaration and how that came about. So, um, so the declaration was adopted on July 4th, 1776, and but on June 10th of 1776, a committee was formed to begin to draft and begin to put into words these ideas. This was Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Robert R. Livingston, and Roger Sherman. And the actual writing was designated to Thomas Jefferson. So this committee got together and drafted this declaration, made drafts of this declaration between June 11th and 28th. Then this was submitted, these drafts, to John Adams and Benjamin Franklin. They made some changes. And then the draft was presented to the Continental Congress on July 2nd, 1776. On July 2nd, there was an adoption of the independent section of the Lee Resolution. So this revision process took all of July 3rd, most of July 4th, and finally, in the afternoon of July 4th, the Declaration was adopted. And then on July 19th, the Congress ordered the Declaration to be engrossed on parchment. And so this was to be written, um, this was a call to have an official copy of the document. And this was to be handwritten with ornamental script and on parchment paper. The Unanimous Declaration of the 13 United States of America. So the signing of that official document happened on August 2nd, 1776. But the deciding, the ratification, the agreeing to the words all happened on July 4th, 1776. And this is the day that carries the energy of that birth of the United States. So this is the day we're going to be using to look at the birth chart of the US. And engrossing, that term is basically a process of copying an official document in a larger hand. Then this document became worn, and so they eventually made a cast of this document to be so that it could be printed again and again. And that's the one that we see generally when we look at the Declaration of Independence. So that signing that happened on August 2nd was more of a formality, and it was officially all the words and all the concepts agreed to on July 4th. So there's quite a bit of discrepancy and disagreement around what time this happened and how do you nail it down to a time to be able to bring forward these ideas of this birth of America. So the most widely favored US chart comes from 18th century astrologer Dr. Ebenezer Sibley. He was a British astrologer. He was also an author, physician, and herbalist. He was alive at the signing, at the time of the signing, and so people think that he may have had access to witness and records that are not available today. Even though he was in Britain, he was a Freemason, and so he was connected to fellow Masons, Hancock, Washington, Franklin, and Hancock and Franklin very connected to this process of this document. And so it's saying that he may have, this time that he used may have been closest to the official time. So the time that uh, Dr. Sibley used was 5:10 p.m. And then we want to look at the evidence to support around that time. Um, so we can look at John B. Early. He's an American astrologer, and he wrote in his ephemeris, he made a note, which is the ephemeris is where we look at where the a recording of where the planets are in the sky. Um, so he wrote in the margin, declaration signed at 10:10 p.m. And so most people think that that was London time, and converted to Pennsylvania time, that would be 5:10 p.m. uh, Local mean time was that. So um, this is around the time that people are looking at, and that Sibley chart, like I said, used that time, 5:10 p.m. It's interesting that on July 4th of 1778, the anniversary celebrations began at 5 p.m. So that's kind of more evidence. Also, Manly P. Hall, in his writing this about this Philadelphia Historical Association Declaration, he said it was signed at approximately 5 p.m. or a little later. And this was based on the writings of uh, Jefferson, Adams, and Hancock. And they all those writings agreed supporting in supporting a time of late in the day. And so there's quite a discrepancy, though. Some astrologers, now the deal with the actual time, what that really changes in your astrology chart and a birth chart is the ascendant. It changes every 2 hours. That's the sign that's on the horizon. It's a very important part of astrology. And so there are some charts that give a Virgo and or Libra rising sign, putting the signing of the Declaration of Independence on that July 4th, 1776 at 11 or noon, around there. So that's kind of where those charts come from. But the evidence to support those timings doesn't really, it's not as palpable as the other evidences. Um, so this is writings from Thomas Jefferson later in his life. And it says the document was signed on the evening of the 4th. Debates having taken up on the greater parts of the 2nd, 3rd, the 4th, were in the evening of the last day closed. The declaration was reported by the committee, agreed to by those, and signed by every member present. So when you look it up online, it does say that August 2nd date of the signing of that engrossed copy, but the original signing was on the 4th of July. And after that, then um, the copy of the drafts of this were of this signed document were distributed to state assemblies, conventions, committees of safety, and commanding officers. So that was when it was on the 4th of July that these ideas and the words got out there to the world and to these conventions and committees and officers. So um, this is the so Manly P. Hall's book is called Our National Horoscope, and it was written in 1941. And in that book, he says the evidence is supporting that the actual signing happened later in the day on the 4th between 4:30 p.m. and 6 p.m. And so for my chart that I'm working with, I have uh, um, I used the pendulum to decide on the exact time, and I got two actual times actually that the beginning of the signing, that the beginning of this like okay we agree on this happened at 3:48 p.m. and then the actual completion of the signing 5:16 p.m. And so 5:16 p.m. is the time that I've used in this birth chart. So, in order to get an understanding of what this US Pluto return is really about, we need to look at the whole chart of the US. So, when we look at a birth chart, of course, the ascendant so important because this time, 5:16 p.m. in Philadelphia, is puts the ascendant at Sagittarius. And so that's the ascendant comes out to be 13 degrees 36 minutes of Sag. Now, a lot of people support this energy of this understanding of Sagittarius as a rising sign because Sagittarius is the adventurer, the seeker, the traveling, and this kind of speaks to the cowboy, the adventure of settling the West, the unknown territory, and so those energies really fit the energy of the US. And this is what I've found in divining people's birth charts when they don't, or divining their time with the pendulum when they don't know their birth time. It's very interesting to then do the chart, and through the other parts of the chart, you can kind of get confirmation and energies come forward of confirmation that that ascendant and that time is appropriate. And so this is what's kind of come forward with the Sagittarius rising for the US birth chart. Um, so this the very powerful energy of Sagittarius because Sagittarius is the hero's journey. And this is indeed what's coming forward around the power of the US in this Declaration of Independence, these ideas of leading the way for all of humanity to this Declaration of Independence from external control. We're going to be finding that the globalist controls, we think they're kind of nasty, evil humans, but it's actually forces outside of our reality, non human entities that have had control over us. This is when we have our human revolution, and worldwide we stand up. Now, it's interesting in this. Some people have pointed out that Sagittarius is the only astrological sign pictured with a weapon, a bow and arrow. And the fact that America is in the position to lead for the world has a lot to do with the fact that we still have our guns. And this is a big part of the Constitution, of our Second Amendment right to bear arms. The idea with this right, even though we nobody really likes violence and guns, right? I mean, we want to protect ourselves. And the idea is that we should have the same level of technology as the government because this is the other part of the Declaration of Independence that we have the right to abolish a government by us, the people, can abolish the government that is turns tyrannical. And so it's really interesting if you track events over these last a couple decades these school shootings and how you can basically track the agenda to take away our guns right along with the energies of fabricated school shootings and things like this, mass catastrophes with shootings. And we're going to be finding out that these events happen because of mind control and drugging and these people being used to create violence in order to give the evidence or, get people to give up their guns and fight for giving up our guns. But in fact, America is here right now leading the way, and this will be shown in the birth chart and as future events unfold, because we did not give that up. We stand for the rest of the world. So Sagittarius on that level, interesting, maybe correlation or validation of a rising sign, appropriate rising sign for this. Now, the rising sign in a birth chart, because it happens in over a 2-hour stretch, it's got an urgency, right? So your rising sign is very different from your sun sign or your moon sign. These are elements of our being and our understanding and our experiences of past lives. The rising sign is more like something that you have not been able to accomplish that you've got to do. It's on the front burner. And this is the urgency of the soul coming in at this time. And I would say that these masters, these founding fathers, had a connection and an understanding of these bigger play of events. And it's no mistake that this exact time worked out to be the birth of the United States astrologically. So Sagittarius is about our destiny. It's where the galactic center is. And Sagittarius energy is the quest and the hero's journey and overcoming all to be triumphant in that quest, travel, going beyond the reaches of the regular everyday understanding. And this is indeed the forerunner, the pioneer, the powerful energies, that exceptionalism that was referred to in Thomas Paine's pamphlet, Common Sense. So all of that kind of seems to resonate with the powerful energy of Sagittarius as a rising sign, that America has a destiny not yet fulfilled and a powerful spiritual destiny. As the hero's journey is a spiritual journey of out beyond the known realms. So let's go ahead and get into the rest of the birth chart so that we can get an understanding of what this birth of the US and what this vision and image is all about. So this birth chart puts the sun and actually a whole stellium of planets, meaning 4 or more planets, in the sign of Cancer. And the sun sits at 13 degrees Cancer, the same degree as the rising, as Sagittarius rising at 13 degrees. And this puts them in an inconjunct relationship. And so inconjunct is directly opposite, one sign over. So the opposite of Sagittarius is Gemini. And so in Cancer, it's one sign over. So an inconjunct energy, that angle is has the message of something, that an adjustment that needs to be made, a major adjustment that needs to be made. And isn't this interesting? Because the sun is our identity, who we think we are, who we see ourselves as. And so if we're looking at the identity of the United States of America, of course, we're always talking about the ideal. We know that the forces have interfered on multiple levels, and the US has been far from being able to uphold these ideals, and yet the story is not yet over. So the sun in Cancer says who we are is about nurturing. And again in the birth chart, now you're going to find this in astrology in a birth chart. If there's an idea that's important, it will be repeated again and again. And so, with 4 planets in Cancer, stellium in Cancer, the nurturing and the mother are the most important concepts of this nation and these ideas. This nation isn't, like we said, it's not just about America, it's for the whole world. The mission of America, the goddess, is about bringing the whole world back to the mother. That not just as a concept or an idea, but through actual changes, major changes in the structures of our reality. And we're seeing this as everything is breaking down with this Pluto and Capricorn completion. So, this inconjunct relationship between Sagittarius risings and the Sun in Cancer says that um, the adjustment that needs to be made, the quest that we're on, is about coming back to our true nature, humanity as nurturers of life, nurturing life. This was such a profound energy that came forward in the pioneers and the settlers of America. This incredible cornucopia of precious, beautiful landscape and land, especially land that is just so fertile for growing food, the breadbasket of the world. And so this is why there was in the fight for America in the American Revolution, there was this all these pictures that depicted America as a goddess, the goddess Columbia, representing this bounty and this beauty and something that needs to be revered and reverenced and honored. And we've come a long way from this as we're allowing China to buy up all of our farmland, right? But all this must be corrected for us to move forward. And that's the powerful message of this birth chart and the Pluto return. So a stellium in Cancer. So not just the sun, our identity, but if we look at this, the identity, the sun is who we are. America is the mother, the land, reverence and respect for the feminine, growth, nature, and beauty. Very powerful energies and exactly reflected in that Declaration of Independence, saying that we're all equal. And of course, women weren't included in that at the time, nor Native Americans or slaves, but the vision and the idea was there. And now we make it true. So, this stellium in Cancer, we've got Venus at 3 degrees, Jupiter at 5 degrees 56 minutes, pretty much 6 degrees, the Sun at 13 degrees, and Mercury at 24 degrees. So, this is our feminine side, our expansion, Jupiter, Venus, our feminine, our expansion, Jupiter, uh, our identity, and our mind, all lining up to be about nurturing. And so the only actual conjunction in that is Venus and Jupiter. And it's pretty interesting to, I mean, because we've been talking about, it's interesting. I've been trying to do this video since I first printed the chart in February of last year, February 2022, when we were first moving into this Pluto return. And have been trying to get this video done since then. So, um, but yet the timing is perfect because the current astrology with this final pass over 27 degrees Capricorn says so much and confirms so much about all of these ideas. And so it's a very powerful time we're living in the actualization. And I hope that this video gives you hope and understanding of the deeper process that's happening on a psychic level for America and the world as we finally set ourselves free from tyranny. So we know that Nikola Tesla, the message that came through his work was that everything is frequency and vibration, and 369 are the secrets of the universe. So 369 represents exactly the human right that the Declaration is actually talking about, is our right to evolve spiritually. That's been held back again and again, reset after reset. And so it's 369 is the technology, the free energy, or the feminine form of electricity that's been suppressed. Because we all know that Nikola Tesla said, oh no, we can have wireless electricity. And then the bankers, the energies of power and control behind the power companies said, no, 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 no. We need a grid. We need to push it through wires because if we don't, we can't charge them for it. And so 369 is a sacred numbers of this free energy technology and the energy technology in our very own bodies. This is part of the reason why the number 6 has been so absconded by the dark side, by the Satanists, and to be called evil, because actually 6 represents this human potential to evolve beyond the lower, our spiritual evolution. And it's been held back for so long, going back to Atlantean time. And it's interesting that with the moon of the birth chart of the US at 27 degrees Aquarius speaking to this. So we'll get into that. But when we're talking about this 369, it's very powerful because we've got Venus at 3 degrees Cancer, Jupiter at that 5 degrees 56 minutes, basically 6 degrees Cancer. And then we also have one sign over, the North Node in Leo at 6 degrees. And Uranus is in Gemini at 8 degrees 55 minutes. Again, pretty much 9 degrees. And so we've got this 369 all over the birth chart, and these all line up. So Uranus in Gemini. Then we've got Venus and Jupiter in Cancer, and the North Node in Leo. So those 3 signs, and those happen in the houses, the delineated houses in the birth chart, house 6, 7, and 8. So these are really important houses for the US, the story of the US in a reclaiming of the true potential for humanity. And the house, 6th house is the house of work, 7th house, relationships, 8th house, what we want to transform. And so very powerful energies here. So I just wanted to bring forward this 369 energy. And also this 369 is represented in, okay, so the North Node is at 6 degrees, 36 minutes of Leo in the 8th house. And 3 and 6 add up to 9. So right there, the North Node at 6 degrees Leo, 36 minutes has 369 right in it. That means the South Node is in Aquarius at 369. And so the North Node in the birth chart is, how are we going to get going? How do we move forward? What's our destiny in moving forward? And in this case, it's Leo. This represents these leaders, these enlightened masters that incarnated throughout history with this idea of utopia, our Aquarian age, leading us, supporting us into this transition, this great transition, this great culmination of all the work we've done over this whole evolution. And these are lights. You know, Leo is a leadership sign, and it represents the true shining of our God self. It's inspirational leaders. So the way forward for the US is through inspirational leadership around the light that we really are and the technology that's available to us as our birthright, 369. And then the South Node. But the North Node is in the 8th house, and that is about transformation. It's the house of Scorpio, the house of Pluto. And so it's about transformation of the darkness into the light. So the South Node, exactly opposite, 6 degrees, 36 minutes, 369 Aquarius. It's speaking to the Aquarian energies, especially with these numbers, are speaking to the Atlantean age, because that was intuitively, it matches that Atlantean time was a Aquarian age, because we know that there was very advanced technologies that we have today but are not told about. These technologies are being used against us, and yet we have not had the disclosure of these technologies. And so it makes sense that this is the South Node. The South Node is what's karmically holding us back in our evolution. So what's holding the US back? The disclosure, the keeping of these technologies from humanity. And this is the greater purpose of the America. And so this South Node is definitely speaking to these suppressed technologies and the trauma around these, because we've got the moon in Aquarius as well. And the moon is emotional pain from the past. as well as how we access and address our emotions. So, this is also in the second house. And the second house is the house of Taurus, the house of wealth, money, resources. And so we can see right there with the example of pushing the energy through wires, we've been controlled through this technology, and our money stolen from us, again and again, our resources, our wealth, that beautiful wealth that's not necessarily money, like the wealth of the land, the cornucopia of the Columbia, the goddess, bought and sold, raped and pillaged again and again. And so it makes sense. And I just wanted to point out that 369, again, is evidenced through those powerful energy of the placement of the North and South node. So we want to look at the moon there in Aquarius. The moon is at 27 degrees, 14 minutes of Aquarius. That's exactly semi-sextile, one sign over from Pluto. 27 degrees, 2 and 7, 9, the end. So the end of tyranny that keeps us from the technology that's our birthright. And the emotional pain around this, and the pain from the past, and the whole emotional energy of America. And it's so interesting because this is arising in us, this frustration and anger at how much we've been suppressed and reset, and this technology is hidden and stolen. We all know that if a scientist or a researcher comes up with a great idea, a patent, the military can just take it. And we, where's the where's the reconciliation of this? And this technology, like Tesla's technology, is incredibly controlled so that they continue to control us. Now, this is the interesting thing because the moon in Aquarius, at 27 degrees Aquarius, this is the Placidus house system. So it's an unequal house system, but it really is powerful. The placement here kind of confirms that this is a great way to look at this chart. Is the moon at 27 degrees Aquarius is in the third house. The third house is the house of Gemini, and Gemini is about communication. So, is this the destiny of America to communicate these truths to the world, to be disclosure? And so that's powerful. Now, when we're talking about Gemini, we want to look at the planets in Gemini in this US birth chart. We've got Uranus at 8 degrees, 55 minutes, and Mars at 21 degrees, 23 minutes. So Uranus at 8 degrees 55 is basically 9, and that means it's in opposition to the Sagittarius ascendant. And this is really powerful because Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius and in Gemini. So the moon in the third house in Aquarius is kind of these corroborating evidence of these concepts. Gemini is also a leadership sign. It's about those leaders that can stand up and speak for us, ruled by Mercury, crystal clear communication and the message getting across. So Uranus is this communication, or Uranus is higher frequency vibration, this technology, that Atlantean time, the ruler of Aquarius, the future technologies or future understandings, ancient wisdom that we haven't been able to fully access, higher frequency technology, vibrations. And again, 9 degrees Gemini, it's like the end of the silencing of these truths. So, across the way from the Sagittarius ascendant means that America's destiny is to speak the truth about these technologies. Um, Powerful that Trump's uncle, John G. Trump, was the one put in charge of the Tesla papers. And so, what is this really about in this time that we live in? What kind of disclosures are actually happening? Is free energy around the corner? Um, and again, now Uranus is in the sixth house, and the sixth house is the house of work. So it's this expression. The work of America is to express these truths through powerful leaders. And then we've got Mars in Gemini as well, but Mars is at 21, 23 very powerful. 21 degrees, a very powerful number. It's got the 2 and the 1 and the 3. And then 23 minutes, 2 and 3 is 5. And so 5 is like the spoke on the wheel and movement. And Mars is movement and action and our warrior. And so the warrior, what we're fighting, how we're fighting for these freedoms is through truth and expression and through the truth of creation, which is right there in the Declaration. We're all equal under God. So this is, and it's not exactly opposite the ascendant, but it's an interesting energy there. And now, but Mars in the seventh house, the house of relationships. So we're working on relating, and the seventh house is the house of Libra, also speaking to justice, truth, harmony. And so we're trying to come back to an energy of harmony and justice through being a warrior for speaking the truth. This is a lot to live up to. And yet, current events, and especially what may be happening behind the scenes, this birth chart absolutely corroborates these things. So, this is the stellium. Then we get into the stellium of planets in Cancer. So, Pluto, we talked about, is this death and rebirth. And I think it's so profound that this particular time, 5:16 p.m. of July 4th, 1776, puts Pluto at 27 degrees, 33 minutes, and 33, 3 and 3. Of course, we got the 3 and the 6, and then the 9, of course, there too, with 2 and 7 make 9. So this is the third example of 369, saying how important this is. And so our death and rebirth process is all about this technology and the 369 and understanding of these frequencies, disclosing these energies to the world, and saving humanity from global tyrannical control and them turning us into robots. So, um, 33 minutes. Let's talk about this because 33 is a number, like we said, associated with Satan and the dark side, and yet it's a sacred number. All the numbers are God's numbers, and it's a number of humanity, and it's also a number of nurturing. And it's representative of our sixth chakra, which is our pineal gland, our ability to create our own reality and see beyond the lower reality. So it's a number that represents the control of humanity. And this is done through the absconding of our timelines, where Saturn, our father time, and our original timeline absconded by these dark forces to create the black box of Saturn, the control energy, the lower matrix. Now, 33 is a number associated, we know, with the Masons, and we know that there's been deep corruption. The Masons, these high level secrets of this technology, they were the keepers of these secrets throughout time. They weren't always corrupted. And so our founding fathers being Masons does not necessarily mean that our nation is corrupted. They're the keepers of the secrets of this, basically the ancient feminine wisdom. Going back to ancient Egypt, these deep mysteries. And this is like the Knights of the Templar and these groups that protected and hid this goddess knowledge. And here we are, America the Goddess. So it's interesting, this 33 minutes. And 33 is also the number of the vertebrae in our spine, representing our ability, our Christ consciousness, our ability to raise our Kundalini energy, activate our higher glandular system, exactly what 369 is about, and overcome physical form through our light body. So it represents these secrets and of ascension. And apparently the Masons and the connected organizations have been the keeper of these secrets. And then that became very dark and infiltrated, like most organizations. Uh, but that number is very important. This is the age that Jesus was at when he went through his transformation, transfiguration experience, showing us showing all of us what's possible. So that makes also all of this about the US rebirth as also a rebirth of the Christ consciousness timeline. And that is evidenced in the astrology as well. So Pluto is in the second house. And so the death and rebirth and the coming out from tyrannical structure all had to do with money all along, right? What really angered people enough to have a revolution was the taxation, not being represented, having to pay to the king, to, to Great Britain, these taxes, but not be represented in the political government. So this is where this people, a government of the people with representation, moving away from the monarchy and the tyranny and control. And so the second house is the house of Taurus, money, resources, and wealth and worth. So Pluto in the second house is saying that the death and rebirth of America is about money. And so it kind of confirms a lot of the insider information that we do have a complete reset coming in our financial system. And of course, we're seeing this demolition, this breakdown of our financial system right now. The central banks losing control, and the what have been called other, third world countries coming together with BRICS to create their own currency. Now that they're trading that currency and only using that their own currencies for oil, the US dollar is going down. And nobody's even paying attention to this. But it's written in the chart. The death and rebirth is through money, resources, and wealth, but it's also about the true wealth, the intuitive wealth, and the wealth of the land, the mother, the caring, the nurturing. That's our true wealth. And the systems that we have set up in place right now, say the CDC and the World Health Organization, speak about health, speak about care, speak about controlling diseases, helping us. The FDA, all these three-letter agencies do not have our best interest at heart, and actually hard evidence that they knowingly are a part of a eugenics program. This is not nurturing. This is not care. It can't go on. And they must be. This is destroyed. Pluto the destroyer. But Pluto doesn't destroy what's not true. So we're seeing this very powerfully, that the death and rebirth of America has everything to do with wealth and resources, and maybe leading the way for the world to come back into a more balanced currency where there's not one country that has all the wealth and all the power and through their currency, but we have an equal footing. And very powerful, beautiful ideas really coming into form before our eyes. So let's talk about this Pluto return. The Pluto return exact to 27 degrees 33 minutes. Oh, it's interesting to note that Pluto was retrograde at the time of the US birth, uh, this birth chart, and Pluto is retrograde now at 27 degrees. So the other hits of Pluto, actually, I'm not quite sure. Some of them were when Pluto was retrograde, but this last and final, when Pluto's retrograde, that's what retrograde, it was retrograde at the US birth chart, very important. And so um, the these exact conjunctions or Pluto returns first time happened on February 20th, 2022, then July 13th, 2022, then December 20th, 2022, and now it's uh, Pluto is back, has only made it back to 27 degrees. It's at 54 minutes right now. And that's where Pluto will turn direct on the 11th of October. And get that, 2754. 2 and 7 is 9, 5 and 4 is 9. The end. The end. The end of financial tyranny. And so that's a very powerful energy when Pluto turns direct on October 11th of 2023. So Pluto is not going to make it all the way back to 2733, but it's like very close. And so this is the final class, of this Pluto return. And the astrology of our current time absolutely validating this. And when we're talking about this, we also want to look at that it's also a Chiron return for uh, the US, because Chiron in the US birth chart happens at 20 degrees, 8 minutes of Aries. And Chiron is in Aries right now. Chiron made it to 19 degrees Aries before turning retrograde a couple months ago. And so Chiron will not make it back to, um, Chiron will not make it back. Let's see, where did I write this down? Chiron will not make it back to 20 degrees until April of 2024. And so that's very powerful because it's like, okay, Pluto return is completing, and then a Chiron return. Now, Chiron is our deepest wounds. So the wounds of America have to do with where we've given up our power, our life force, our energy, where we've let this globalist control power, the central banks, the Rothschilds, suck the life out of us and tax us into our death, you know? And then use that tax money to create war after war. We're going to find this out. Our taxpayer dollars funded the both sides of every single war. And so these are created situations to keep us in trauma, and the military industrial complex to steal our money. And it just can't go on now that we are having our Pluto return. Now, Pluto will go back into Capricorn just briefly for like 4, 5, 6 weeks in November, October, November of 2024 to 29 degrees. So it'll still be within 2 degrees. So, in a way, that's the absolute completion of our Pluto return in November of 2024. So, let's talk about the rest of the birth chart so we can really get an understanding of what's going on here with this Pluto return. Um, the stellium in Cancer tells us that everything is about nurturing for the US. And so, this return of humanity to their natural right to evolve is also this return to the goddess, the feminine. And so we are now with Venus and Jupiter conjunct. So Venus is our feminine side at 3 degrees Cancer, and then Jupiter at 6 degrees Cancer, 369 again, and Venus and Jupiter in conjunction. Incredibly powerful message of that, because Jupiter is where we want to expand and grow. And so America, the destiny of America, is all about this expansion into the feminine side. Really, if we think about all wars, financial tyranny, it's all from this patriarchal system of control, external control. And so the whole war against humanity is against the feminine. We all have masculine and feminine within us. It's not women and men. We've all incarnated in male and female bodies. We've got to get over this war of the sexes and yet come back to and understand that so often it's the feminine that's been persecuted. You know, the feminine side, our feminine side is the intuitive side. Um, this and so the persecution of the feminine affects all of us. It's in our ability to stand up with our rightful voice, the voice of reason and truth, of nurturing, of what's best for everyone. We've been living in a world with what's best for the 1%, and the rest of us, who cares, you know? And so coming back to the goddess, the rebirth of the goddess is the rebirth of these feminine principles. So incredibly powerful. And this is confirmed with the US, with America being seen as a goddess and worshipped as a goddess. And so this is Venus, Jupiter just absolutely confirms that in Cancer. And these planets, the stellium, the first three are in the seventh house. So this is relations, the house of Libra, justice, truth, balance, harmony. And how are we going to do it? Through expanding the feminine, the worship of the feminine, the worship of the goddess. The worshiping of the goddess was, of course, called totally wrong, bad, and evil by the control energies of the patriarchal religious structures. Um, and yet, this is just the truth of the feminine. When you love the earth, when you connect with her, when you when you cultivate, then you get her bounty. As the earth as the physical earth as a representation, a living, breathing representation of this great mother principle. And so it's very simple. You love and honor and connect with the earth, and she continues to give you her blessings. And this is the revival, the rebirth of the feminine, rebirth of the goddess. It's not sexist. It has nothing to do with feminism. That was created by the CIA to try to get women to reject their femininity, actually. And so we are having a complete rebirth and the beautiful and powerful and purification with this Venus retrograde that we're experiencing right now, Venus coming out of retrograde and coming into this Black Moon Lilith conjunction on October 10th, the day before the Pluto turns direct, saying this is a 0 degrees Virgo, Black Moon Lilith, the dark secrets of the feminine, and Venus representing our feminine. So a purification of the darkness of the feminine and bringing the goddess back into the light. And this is a cleansing and a purification of our earth and our world as well. Very powerful, happening on the day before Pluto turns direct, the turning of the tide of this whole story. So let's look at Black Moon Lilith in the birth chart of the US. Black Moon Lilith is at 19 degrees Virgo, 28 minutes, and that is in conjunct Neptune in Virgo at 22 degrees. This is powerful because Neptune right now is at 25 degrees, retrograding back to 24 degrees, but last year of Pisces. So this puts Neptune in the sky last year was exactly opposite Pluto, the natal Pluto of the US. So this opposition, Pluto in Virgo versus Pluto in Pisces, it's about cleaning up the Piscean age and getting us back on our spiritual purpose. Because the Piscean energy and Neptune in the birth chart is your spiritual service. What's your higher spiritual service? So the higher spiritual service of the US is this purification of the earth in Virgo with Black Moon Lilith, the deepest, darkest secrets of the feminine, also in Virgo, saying cleaning it up. We're cleaning up the deep, dark secrets. And also that Neptune opposition, because Neptune will go to 24 retrograde this year. So still in opposition, Neptune opposition transit. And so Neptune in Pisces is speaking to cleaning up the Piscean age of this religious persecution energies and the lies that the feminine is dark, wrong, and bad, as a way to control humanity. Because when we're connected to the mother, when we feel that bounty in our life, we feel loved and cared for. We're not in fear. So we're not so controllable. So do you see why the feminine and the goddess had to be so persecuted? And so this Neptune opposition of Neptune is a very powerful kind of reclaiming of that Christ consciousness timeline, the beginning of the Pisces, that marked the beginning of the Piscean age. And so America and the destiny of America to clean up the earth, to heal these wounds, and to have a restart of that Christ consciousness timeline. So this is indeed the energies of the utopian vision of throughout time. And that's really reflected, that led up to the Declaration of Independence. And that's really reflected in, if you track the energies around the Saturn-Uranus conjunctions that happen every 20 years. And I have a video about that out where you can look at that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that we had at the end of 2020. And talking about how those was a marker. Now, a very important marker is also that I talk in depth about in that video. I can link that below, is the sextile that happens about 3 years after that conjunction. And so we just had the sextile, and get this, the sextile of the conjunction happened at the very beginning of Aquarius and the end of Capricorn in 2020, at the end of 2020. The sextile happens now with Saturn in Pisces, Jupiter in Taurus. Jupiter in Taurus, expanding wealth, true wealth, and understanding of true wealth. Saturn in Pisces, rewriting, reclaiming our original timeline, reclaiming this progression and our permission within ourselves, our autonomy as spiritual beings to evolve beyond the nightmare. And so that sextile happened in June of this year, 2023, and the next sextile will happen in January 2024, right when Pluto gets out. Well, it moves back into Aquarius. So it's all lining up. And so we can see if we track through history these Saturn Uranus conjunctions, the power of the role of America in the ultimate vision. So, so let's talk about. So we talked about this Neptune and Black Moon Lilith conjunction, a purification of our spiritual service, cleaning up the earth. And that says the destiny that the Sagittarius rising is speaking to is all about that, and the Christ consciousness timeline. Because Neptune and Black Moon Lilith are in the sign or in the house of Sagittarius, the ninth house. So our spiritual seeking, our destiny, our expansion beyond our current knowing is this claiming back our spiritual service and connection to the earth. That the structured patriarchal religion said earth and nature are wrong and bad and evil, as well as the feminine, right? And yet the true teachings of the goddess is that we're all one, and the earth is our body, and our body is a temple, and we're hosting the goddess in our very own body as we come back into these sacred technologies that allow us to free ourselves from these lower constraints that allow the tyrannical control. Because if we're evolving as a species into our light body, into our spiritual evolution, those forces of control cannot hold us down anymore. And this is exactly where we're at. So, a very powerful energy in the birth chart with Pluto, when we're talking about Pluto, is that it's in opposition to Mercury in Cancer. So we talked about that stellium in Cancer. We got Venus, Jupiter, the Sun, and Mercury. But Mercury is in the 8th house, and the other planets are in the 7th house. And Mercury is at 24 degrees, 12 minutes. Very powerful how these numbers are all lining up and confirming that we've got a good birth time here. So Mercury at 24 degrees Cancer in the 8th house, transformation of the mind into a more nurturing, back to the nurturing mind. That we're here, we want to take care of each other. The Aquarian utopia is about when we take care of the whole, we take care of the individual. When we take care of the individual, we take care of the whole. And so everyone is important. If we're, and this is interesting because when Rudolf Steiner talked about what we're evolving into, he said we're going to becoming more and more psychic, that we're literally turning our bodies and the earth into light, and that it'll get to a point where we cannot be in the same room with someone without feeling what they feel. Of course, supernova souls already know this. And so this transformation of the mind to this nurturing quality that we cannot evolve because we cannot, as we evolve, we become more and more sensitive to those around us. So we've got to take care. We cannot have homeless on the street uncared for. That's not going to work, you know? And so all of these systems must need to be uh, completely changed. And that's the energy of like this shift that we're moving into is a lot of the funds, prayer and division, the funds that have been used for dark control energies for war, the military industrial complex, but also the persecution of individual citizens of the United States that are regular everyday humans being called domestic terrorists and harassment on a massive level. Maybe that's the cause of a lot of our homelessness, of very powerful beings being reduced to nothing because they're cut off from all their resources and all their support through these dark programs. Supposedly every police department in major US cities has a secret department for these types of harassment of regular everyday citizens, and an unlimited, seemingly unlimited amount of funds for these dark programs. And yet, in this revival, the vision of those funds being immediately redirected for humanitarian projects that can solve these problems. It's really not that hard, is it? Especially since there's this incredible wealth that's been stolen from us. Miles and miles of gold under the Vatican that apparently has taken many, many planes to bring back to the US. It's been seized from these tyrannical control energies. And so this redistribution of wealth through humanitarian programs to fix these problems, say we can't go on like this. How can we live with ourselves, with our people not being taken care of? This is America. This is the breadbasket. This is the cornucopia. This is the goddess, Columbia, and we must start acting like it. So that's really powerful, this transformation of the mind into more nurturing thinking. That's the opposing energy to this Pluto in Capricorn. And oppositions are powerful because it's like this tension, but then a mutual receptivity that indeed clearing ourselves of this tyrannical control over our own power. So it's like returning the power to the people is how we support this transformation of the mind. And the transformation of the mind is how we stand up to those authorities and say, you know, we're seeing clearly now. No more. No more. We've chosen to ignore, and we didn't know what you were doing behind the scenes with our money, but we're not going to allow it to happen anymore, you know? So that's a lot of the energy there with that opposition of Mercury and Pluto. So this opposition of Mercury and Pluto actually forms a kite formation. And I've been talking in the current astrology about these magical kites. And the kite is like a kite shape in astrology is like the Charlie Brown kite with a diamond kind of at the top and a main triangle. The main triangle of the kite is made from a trine, and that's in the same sign, same element, right? So in this, the the kites that are happening right now, currently in 2023, are Earth trine kites, and there's an Earth trine kite in the US birth chart. So the axis of the kite is this Mercury Pluto opposition. And the body of the kite is made through Vesta, asteroid goddess Vesta, at 19 degrees Taurus, and that Neptune and Black Moon Lilith, but Neptune at 22 degrees of Virgo. So we've got this 22 degrees master builder number. This is also the degree that Uranus is at right now in Taurus. So it's powerful that Vesta in the birth chart is so close. So we've got a Uranus Vesta conjunction, Uranus in the sky conjunct to the natal Vesta in birth chart. So let's talk about this. Vesta is the keeper of the sacred flame. And indeed, when the Pope, when the energies of control came through, you know, the Catholic Church really decided, the beginning of the Catholic Church, one of the first things they did was extinguish the sacred fires of the goddess temples. And so Vesta represents this, the sacred fire, this passion and purpose in our heart that's never gone out. It's very connected to Neptune in our birth chart, our spiritual. It's our creative passion, but in alignment with our spiritual truths. And it's powerful to think of definitely an energy, and one of these powerful, enlightened, illuminated leaders that we've had was JFK, and his assassination was a powerful reset and disappointment, taking us off our beautiful timeline and potential for America. And at his gravesite, there is a sacred flame, an eternal flame. And so to have this earth trine kite with Vesta is a very powerful message for us. So Vesta's at 19 degrees, a very powerful number, and of Taurus. And like I said, close to where Uranus is now at 22 degrees Taurus. And Uranus in Taurus right now is speaking to the embodiment and the transformation of the earth in higher frequency vibrations. And Vesta is this activation of the sacred purpose, the sacred fires of Taurus, of the earth. Represents embodiment and the earth and wealth and resources. So it's like the sacred fire has never gone out, and it lives in our hearts, and it's about to lift and take flight in this rebirth of L'America. So this Earth trine kite, then we've got that 22 degrees Virgo, Neptune at 22 degrees Virgo, or the purification, the actualization. 2 and 2 is 4. It's about bringing into form ideals. The master builder number, master builders were the race that built the pyramids, and they had access to this higher technology of levitation. And an earth trine kite speaks exactly to levitation, which is basically the techniques we find. Like there's plenty of lamas in the East that have the ability to levitate their body, and understanding that gravity, science, history, as we've been told, all a lie. And so this is a very powerful energy of lifting up out of the heaviness and the dross of being trapped in lower physical reality, and being able to evolve and ascend into uh, a new situation. So very powerful, because the axis of that kite, Mercury in Cancer, opposite Pluto in Capricorn, and then Mercury at the tip, that's at the top of the kite, leading the way of the kite. The Pluto is kind of holding the base of the kite, the direction, the foundation of the kite, the ability to keep going in the right direction. And then the body of the kite, this sacred flame, the sacred fire, the purpose of earth, the spiritual purpose of earth, the original timeline. And then 22 degrees Neptune and Virgo, the purification of our spiritual purpose. And so this, it's all coming together. So it's a beautiful kite shape. And with Pluto at the base of that kite saying the end of external control over our personal power. And when we're levitating and emanating light, then that demands it demands and requires the disclosure of these advanced technologies that have been kept from us. So, one of the things that's very powerful that also relates back to the 369 and the activation of the light body and the activation of the higher technologies is something found in birth charts as I've examined birth charts and went astrology when this happens. When planets line up in one sign after another, if they were in all 12 of the signs, that makes the flower of life pattern. And the flower of life pattern is creation and represents this activation of the light body, of the activation of the new human, the new man. And so this is what the Christ consciousness timeline is really about too. And so we see this star pattern. We already talked about it with the 369, with Uranus at in Gemini, and then the next sign over, we've got uh, Jupiter, and then the next sign at 6 degrees Cancer, and then the next sign over, the North Node at 6 degrees Leo. So there's like a lining up there. But we also have this with what I call this star pattern uh, with Chiron at 20 degrees Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, Vesta at 19 degrees Taurus, Mars at 21 degrees Gemini, and Mercury at 24 degrees Cancer. Then it skips a sign, but then Mercury is in a sextile relationship with Neptune in Pisces, and that Neptune in Virgo. So this star pattern, and it's in the first signs of the zodiac, the first quadrant you would call of the zodiac, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. And so it's like, again, it's speaking to a complete rebirth of our reality. The formative energies of this birth chart says that we're bringing or reworking our relationship to the formative foundational energies of what it means to be human. And so that's a very powerful energy there. with those. And those that it's first quadrant of the zodiac, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, in the US birth chart come in the houses of 4, 5, 7, and 9. So 4 is the house of security, the mother, the Cancer energy, very important house for the US birth chart. 5 is creation and children. And there's this energy of like the US, America, in its full potential in these times, the rebirth of the goddess, bringing us all back home as children of the garden, children of God, coming back to our innocence, our purity, our ability to play and create and grow and be supported in the positive attributes of life instead of all of these structures that say they're there to help us and care for us, but actually standing in the way of our evolution and our ability to care for each other, leaving us feeling deeply disconnected and disturbed in order to live in this world. It's like we have to disconnect our psyche, as insensitive souls from what's really happening. Deeply damaging psychological time for advanced intuitive souls, and yet the tide is about to turn. So um, that's a very powerful energy looking at that. And that puts Chiron and Vesta in a semi-sextile, one sign over. And that's about working together, creative solutions. Vesta then sextile to Mars, Mars sextile or semi-sextile to Mercury, and Mercury in a sextile relationship to Neptune and Black Moon Lilith. Um, so when planets are in a sextile relationship, it gives an opportunity for what's called a yod. And I've been talking about a lot about this yod formation because we've been having it for the last 4 or 5 months, with 3, 4 months, I guess, with Venus first at the tip of the yod. The sun took his turn in the tip of the yod here, in Leo, across the way from the sextile in the current astrology between Pluto in Capricorn and Neptune in Pisces. And the yod is a finger of God. So the point of the yod in the birth chart, if you have a yod, it's like everything is about that. Everything points to that. This is the destiny. This is the ultimate, the most important thing in the birth chart. And in the US chart, not only is this beautiful kite, but there's 2 yods. So let's talk through these yods. The first yod is, and the way these yods line up, it creates almost like a six-pointed star. And then the dynamic astrology, the angles of the kite and the grand earth trine, it creates like a diamond shape, a multifaceted. And when you find this in the birth chart of a person, it means that they're multifaceted, like a very old soul. And this is kind of evidence again that our founding fathers were enlightened masters incarnated to support this vision, to be the spark of this vision to be brought into the world. So, um, and that's again going back to the kite, the energy of the kite in a birth chart is like an intuitive astrology from my perspective. These are aspects of gifts and skills and things you've worked on in past lives, like this life you did this life this, and but typically a kite, it's about bringing that all together, and so integrating all these gifts and skills you've had over many lifetimes. um, and so typically a kite will not come into form, or really, because a kite needs, it will fly by itself, but it needs lift, it needs help to get up there. And so it's not usually until later in life that people will integrate these parts of their kite and really lift off. And is this what's happening right now? So we've had 3 earth kites in the current astrology telling us that it's time, earth trine kites, to for the US to come into its potential, to lift off and levitate above the financial tyranny and global control, and show the world and help the world come into this beautiful idea of equality. So let's look at these yods. The first yod is between the ascendant at 13 degrees Sagittarius, the sextile, and the sextile is with Saturn at 14 degrees Libra. So the ascendant, this destiny, a great destiny that the US must attain. It's just the most important role of the US is this greater destiny. In sextile, this is a harmonious relationship of creative solutions, Saturn in Libra. Now, Saturn is our dharma in the birth chart, meaning our true work. It's also the obstacles to our work, just like Saturn represents father time, the original timeline, but also how it's been absconded by Satan, you know? And so Saturn in Libra says the US Dharma is justice, balance, harmony, bringing back together the masculine and the feminine into balance so that we can come into our heart consciousness. But it's also not having justice, truth, and justice is what keeps us from our destiny. And so it's an exciting time. If we're on the edge of massive disclosures of truth, this is how we get back into our dharma and do the work that we came here to do as human citizens. And part of this vision, no matter where you live in the world, you may feel connected to this L'America, this idea of this vision. This, it's not, America wasn't a place originally, it was an idea, a vision. And so Saturn is saying, and Saturn is in the 10th house, and that's the house of Capricorn, which is about our expertise. So the 10th house represents where we come into our full expression of what we have to offer in our lifetime. So the full expression of the destiny of America is justice around the whole world. Now, across from this beautiful sextile, we've got the point of the yod, Vesta. So Vesta's holding the kite, and it just makes so much sense. It's like, oh, the sacred eternal flame at JFK's gravesite. Wow. And so Vesta is the point of this yod, and we talked about the point of the yod being like very, very important. So it makes asteroid Vesta the keeper of the sacred flame of our spiritual, sacred, creative passion, purpose about the earth. So the purpose and the destiny, the justice that America, the the destiny, the great hero's journey of America is about reawakening that sacred flame, basically tumbling the powers of control, of patriarchal control over religion, our rights, because this was a big part of the founding of America. It was about religious freedom. And so this is saying, yeah, the goddess mama is coming home. Everything is speaking to this. I mean, so much in this birth chart. Neptune, the grand earth drawing kite, but Neptune in Virgo speaking to the great mother and cleaning up and our spiritual purpose. Uranus, there, we've got our, Vesta in Uranus is in Taurus now, but Vesta interacting with Vesta in the birth chart in Taurus, um, and stellium in Cancer, speaking about the power of nurturing and our identity, everything having to do with that. So um, the rebirth of the goddess in the US birth chart is all over the place. It's kind of like, it's interesting. These pictures have been very suppressed, but all these iconic images of America as that goddess Columbia, something worth fighting for. Um, Now, then the other yod is between the sextile that we talked about between Mercury and Neptune. So Mercury at 24 degrees Cancer, opposite Pluto, and sextile to Neptune in trine to Pluto in the birth chart, and Neptune in Virgo. And so this beautiful sextile between Mercury and Neptune, the transformation of the mind into a more nurturing mind with Mercury in Cancer in the 8th house, and our spiritual purpose of cleaning up the earth and coming back into our greater spiritual purpose at 22 degrees Virgo, Neptune. So the sextile between those helpful solutions like the mind, transforming the mind to be more nurturing thinking, cleaning up the mind control, cleaning up the nanotech, cleaning up the control energies that have gone into keeping us from our sacred, beautiful, organic ability to generate our own power, basically. And then that sextile with Neptune is this creative solutions and our spiritual purpose, our great spiritual purpose of reawakening the goddess on earth and harmonizing, with this transformation of our mind to be more, our thinking to be more nurturing. And then the point of this yod, we come back to the moon in Aquarius, 27 degrees, Aquarius in the third house. So the destiny of this yod around transforming our thinking to be more nurturing and to cleaning up the earth with coming back to our sacred spiritual purpose of earth evolution. How do we do it? What's the point? What's our destiny? And this is the moon in Aquarius. So this is where we get to this kind of connecting back to these technologies and to when these technologies were originally suppressed in our evolution, all the way back to Atlantean time. There was infiltrations of the sons of Baal, and this was about taking the technologies that these advanced souls were working with and using them to create a weapon of destruction, of mass destruction. Same thing, directed energy weapons that are being used, like on the mother, an attack on the mother in Hawaii, and all of their weather, our extreme weather, all of our catastrophes, you know. And so it's the withholding and control over these technologies that have allowed us to get to this point. And the moon is our how we deal with emotions, but also our past emotional pain and our relationship to our mother. So the US is kind of having a lot of pain around their relationship, our relationship to the mother, because all the way back to what happened in Atlantean time, where those technologies were used for destruction. The advanced souls working with those technologies blamed themselves, and they were set up to blame themselves so that they never get anywhere close to this technology. This is why we encounter fear when we begin to open up our Kundalini channels. It's like programmed fear, like don't go anywhere near that. Um, and and it's just all designed to keep us from our own power and the power of the people. And so the moon at 27 degrees, that's exact sextile to Pluto, a semi-sextile to Pluto and Capricorn, one sign over. This is trying to work together. So um, this, the pain from the past around these suppression of these technologies, and then moon in the third house, which is the Gemini house about expression. So the US, destiny, the tip of the yod, is to express and heal the pain, the emotional pain from the suppression of these technologies. And how is that done? Through the expression of truth. Everything says that America is poised and the destiny is about disclosure because Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, in Gemini. So, speaking to these advanced technologies and across from the rising sign, ascendant in Sagittarius, the great destiny of America, is all about these technologies and going all the way back to Atlantean time. And so are these reincarnated founding fathers, these masters, connected all the way back to the ancient wisdom of Atlantean time? So very powerful energy there. And so this yod at the tip, with the moon at the tip of the yod, is about healing these emotional wounds around the stolen technology through communication. And the US, America, bringing disclosure to the world. And Vesta at the tip of the other yod, it's about the creative expression because it's in the fifth house, the house of Leo, the creative expression of our spiritual purpose of earth. And that fifth house also rules children. And it just has this energy of coming back to knowing and being and living in the freedom of being children of God, of creation, of the goddess, of coming back to the garden and being able to play and create again without all of this control and everything working against. It's like there's the war, there's been one war, and it's again of the patriarchal control energies. And this isn't male bashing, it's just the powers of control uh, had that energy. And through this last era we've been in, but now the tide is turning. And so the destiny is this creative expression um, of the spiritual purpose of earth and that we're all children. And that's exactly, we're all children of creation. And that this war against nurturing the mother, the goddess, the feminine, and all of these, the stellium and Cancer saying, yeah, this is what it's all about. And coming back home, and like what that Declaration of Independence said, we're all created equal. And we all have our God given rights, creator given and endowed by our creator. So these words are so important, and they've inspired so many people throughout the world. And yet we know that America has not been able to live up to this ideal. And this is part of the moon in Aquarius. It's like this shame energy over where we haven't, like, we are, America as this, um, think of the people that came here and the pioneers, and found, what they had to go through to try to establish civilization, and the powerful souls, and the powerful souls that held this nation in the native, um, in the native cultures, this powerful warrior, this resurgence and healing of these wounds, um, of where we haven't been able, and the grief of where we haven't been able to live up to our exceptionalism, especially with how many people are suffering while so many other people prosper with so much wealth. And it's just can't go on. So, this is speaking to the destiny of America. Now, there's also a cardinal T square. Um, and cardinal signs are the beginners, the starters. So again, it's pointing to the US as starting something. We've got to lead the way. We're the only one with the guns left, and not that we're going to be pulling them out, because everything in the birth chart says is about the art of war. With Saturn in Libra, it's like the goddess Athena, like how to fight without fighting, the art of war, strategy, intuition, you know, let the enemy destroy itself. This is kind of the deeper truths of what's going on, in why things are so weird and we can't figure out what's going on. That's part of what's happening. The enlightened leaders of our time really following this art of war uh, concepts. So the cardinal T square is between Saturn in Cancer. I mean, sorry, Saturn in Libra. We've talked about in the 10th house that the US is experts at this negotiation and strategy. Um, and so that, again, more evidence that these are our founding fathers, reincarnated masters. And I'm telling you, they're right here with us too today. And so, opposite of Chiron, so Saturn in Libra in the 10th house, we're experts at justice. It's our dharma to bring truth and justice. And yet, everything was working against that, with the obstructions. And then, but opposite Chiron, these deep wounds around where we gave our lifeblood away. How many people have died on the soil, and we're not anywhere near representing the ideal of America, you know? And so, this Chiron, these wounds of giving away our power and our lifeblood, and in the fourth house, security. And it's like, so in the revolution, we had to go to war in that time. We had to use weapons to try to bring security. Of course, we were trapped right back into financial tyranny through the control energies behind the crown, working at both sides of the revolutionary, or of the um, the Civil War, both sides of the Civil War, to bankrupt us to them again. And that was the beginning of the central bankers having control over our nation. So, this opposition between Saturn, and it says that the what's interfering with our ability to take our role, our dharma of truth and justice in the world, is these wounds around having to have violence and the war and the pain, in order to try to have security. Um, and the security comes from the fight for life. Aries is like about a fight for life. Chiron in Aries is like that life or death situation. And so it kind of speaks to that American Revolution where it was, at that point where um, that's delineated in the Declaration of Independence as well, laid out all of the wrongs that the king, they used the king, not the people of Britain. They wanted to separate that out, but the monarchy, the control energies, and all the wrongs that had been done to Americans in recent times to give evidence of why they must declare independence. And so that opposition between Chiron and Saturn makes a lot of sense. And then they're in square to the T square happens with the sun at 13 degrees Cancer. So we're coming back to our identity as nurturing. And and the sun is in the 7th house. So that's the house of Libra, which is justice and truth, but also balance, harmony, and relationships. So it's through relationships, healing relationships. And isn't this interesting? Because the forces that want to keep us, that have kept control over us, use the very simple concept of divide and conquer, right? Two parties, black and white, men and women, keeping us fighting against each other instead of seeing the common enemy that's behind every war and every conflict. And so it's very powerful, this T square, because like I said, these are the cardinal signs are the starters and the beginners. So it's like a new start, a new start to who we are in our nurturing, a new start to healing the wounds of where we've had to give up our life and lifeblood and still not have the nation we fought for. And where our dharma has been obstructed through these control forces. Um, and everything says we must come back to truth and justice and this disclosure of these technologies. And we lead the way back to the garden for the whole world. And this is our exceptional energies of these pioneering spirit. And yet, where's the evidence of this? Like, we have to be pioneers, not for our own individual wealth, but for the benefit of all. So we talked about that Chiron return, and Chiron turned retrograde on July 24th this year of 2023 at 19 degrees 58 minutes. So it's like almost at 20. It was basically at 20 degrees. And it's kind of like, whoa. So this period of time of this Chiron retrograde we're in is very important to the path of the US destiny. Chiron will then come back to 20 degrees and finally make it to 20 degrees on April 19th of 2024 and will hit the exact mark of 20 degrees 8 minutes, another transformational energy. We're transforming the wounds of giving over our life in in order to gain true security in the 4th house, right? We need true security, which isn't like, oh, okay, I've got mine. True security is we're all cared for in alignment with the mother, honoring the goddess and the gifts that she brings forward. How far away have we gotten from this connection to where our food comes from, where our clothes come from? This is going to be a big focus of the humanitarian projects, getting us back in connection and being a part of, creating, working with the resources of the earth and really being in reverence to what's available to us in this cornucopia, this beautiful world we live in. And enough raping and pillaging of the feminine and the earth, right? So Chiron comes to that exact Chiron return of at 20 degrees 8 minutes on the 21st of April, 2024. So very powerful marker, right in the middle of this time of Pluto finishing up. It's, like it says, it's in Aquarius, but it's going to dip back into Capricorn and be 2 degrees, 3 degrees away from where it was at the US chart in November of 2024. So right in the middle of this whole cycle, we've got the Chiron return happening. And so that's saying that we're working for reclaiming our power, our life force, our lifeblood, and true security. And again, everything pointing back to that connection to the mother with that stellium of planets in Cancer. Um, so there is a powerful energy. We talked a little bit about Uranus in currently in Taurus in trine to Neptune, the natal Neptune of the US chart at 22 degrees. And so that's really powerful because Uranus is the embodiment of these higher frequency vibrations. And the Neptune in Virgo is at 22 degrees, the master builder number, the reawakening of our spiritual purpose and the cleaning up of Earth to come back into alignment with our spiritual purpose. So that's very important. Now, Neptune and Black Moon Lilith black are close together. Black Moon Lilith at 19, Neptune at 22 degrees Virgo in the birth chart in the ninth house are in square to Mars at 21 degrees Gemini. So this is powerful because we talked about Mars, our warrior for words, for the truth, and the truth of creation at 21 degrees. And moving forward the truth of creation through being a warrior for disclosure, but in square to that vision of the master builders, right? So it's like until we have the full truth of our full history, which the Masons hold, and that's been an infiltrated control energy, but originally the Masons just the keepers of this wisdom. And so these are at odds, right? And it's saying we cannot have truth and justice because Mars is in the seventh house until we have full disclosure of the spiritual destiny of man and America. So that's a very powerful square. That's a mutable square. And the mutable signs are about adjustments. And so, kind of like being flexible and adjusting. So, Mars, our powerful warrior, fighting for the truth of creation to bring justice and trying to adjust this. Like, so that means that's kind of bringing forward that Black Moon Lilith at 19 degrees. Um, and Neptune, the cleaning up of the secrets of our spiritual purpose, right? We've got to have the absolute full truth of the earth and history all the way back to Atlantean time. That's a lot. It's a lot for humanity to all of a sudden come into the understanding that everything we've been taught is a total lie. Our history, so much has been rewritten in history and hidden from us. These are these resets. Every time that humanity got close to the activation of these, our light body and these technologies, disaster struck, you know, and to keep us from those technologies. So we need the whole truth, nothing but the truth, or we're never going to get to justice. And so that's the interesting times that we're in. And yet, Saturn, our Dharma, our expertise in the 10th house, is this communication, this strategy, this justice, this truth in Libra, this balance and this harmony. It can be done without war. And that's the strange movie we're living right now. But the energies as Pluto turning direct on the 11th and moving out of beginning to move out of Capricorn of October in 2023, the tide is turning, it's moving, America's destiny is coming home. And this is the US Pluto return. So the US Pluto return is, let's see, where did I write this? US Pluto return is this time of a great renewal and a death and rebirth of these authority structures, of the control over the power of the people. And our relation in the second house, Pluto in the second house, to value and resources, a complete revaluation, right? Right now, we value your items, your money, your paper money, pile that shit up. You can't take it with you, right? What's true wealth? Oh, the mother, the love, our connection, our relationships. our spiritual purpose and our ability to strive and create and activate that spiritual purpose within. So the Pluto return is a reestablishment of those original principles that came forward on July 4th, 1776, of these high ideals on which the nation has been founded. So it represents a completion of a great cycle. It takes about 240 years for Pluto to make it around the zodiac, and that's quite a bit of time. And it's like the death and rebirth part, it's like a complete renewal going back to these original foundations. So it's like a cementing in of these fundamental values on which our Constitution is built. And those ideas first came through in that Declaration of Independence. And we talked about this Pluto, the destroyer of what's not working. And so we're seeing this kind of controlled demolition, maybe these same masters incarnated, working behind the scenes to win this war without fighting and take down these structures of control. Um, the US, this Mother Columbia, enormous resources, the cornucopia, she deserves our gratitude and respect if we want to receive the bounty of her offerings. We must honor her. So, this is a great opportunity, the Pluto return, to reaffirm these core values, to understand these ideals, to really work with these concepts, and in relation to the Aquarian age that's coming, this golden age. But how do we deserve it when we've been so off the mark? Like the impulse came in, but we were never able to uphold that impulse in reality. And that's what these times are about. This values to affirm, this Pluto return is an opportunity to affirm these values and ideals of the original founding, one nation under God. To understand and so by looking at this birth chart, we can get a better understanding of what these values actually are. And it all comes back to that honoring of the goddess. So, a very powerful time we're living in. And again, if you feel that you're part of this soul group, a specific group of souls, very connected to this first American Revolution and therefore the second American Revolution, and of course, these beautiful ideals over time, trying to bring us back to what's rightfully ours, our human evolution, the technology that's available to us. Let's connect if you feel that you're in this soul group and you have a strong connection, because there's something important we're here to do together. So thank you so much for your time and energy, and supernova souls, these you powerful souls that have held this vision of what's right and good and true through all the darkness of the dark times, being persecuted again and again for the one principle that we stand for over lifetimes, which is we all have a direct connection to source. Our God-given rights, a direct connection. We are particles of creation, and we have access to all of that creation. And this is the essential, quintessential understanding of these technologies that have been stolen from us. And so supernova souls were persecuted again and again for living and breathing, shining the light, demonstrating that we have our own source. Because they're like, oh, no, 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 that's a witch. That's a heretic. Um, and because if we had our connection to source, we wouldn't need those patriarchal structures. Like you got to go through the church and you better pay us some taxes to get to God, right? You know? And that's just a complete distortion of the original teachings of the goddess of like, let's come together at these sacred times of the year to celebrate the bounty and the life that's here for us. You know, it's not about, oh, I'm going to worship the goddess in order to get this. And then it was perverted, just like everything else. All that was good and right and true. So it's not this feminine as female is better than male. It's just like coming back to the true principles and the role of the masculine, the divine masculine, these enlightened leaders standing up and speaking the truth, holding the space for us to come back to these beautiful principles of truth and love and creation, and that we all have a direct access and we have the right to pursue the expression of these beautiful gifts bestowed upon us by existing. That's definitely the energy of Chiron and Aries. Aries holds the picture of the I am, the beautiful picture of the potential the spiritual potential of the Christ consciousness, of this unity and wholeness of the being, this I am consciousness. It's that beautiful picture of that. And so the wounds of Chiron, it's of how far we've gotten away from that. And so again, through the energy of the goddess, the worship of the mother, the worship of our land, seeing that we're all connected, that the land is an embodiment of God and we are an embodiment of God and creator. This is what it's all about in the destiny of the US. And may Columbia, the goddess, rise again. Thank you so much for being here with me. And I look forward to connecting with you soon. Until then, I'm Adrienne Elise. Namaste.